Dick Dunn, I think, was, you think of a lot of guys in certain periods at Waterford that were successful, that were maybe a little liberal with the bumper from time to time, and maybe Dick was like that, but if he ever was, I never saw it. I just thought he was so smooth.
Dick I liked very much. Dick was a genuinely nice person. He drove the 3 for Al Gaudreau, which was called Budda's Bullet.
In '71 was the first year we had our own car, and every single night they went out to race. My husband had tried so many innovative things that year, and every time the car went out, the car would spin out and have to go to the rear, and it's just every week it was one thing after another. And at the end of the year, I think we did win one race, only because we'd started up front. But then the following winter, they built the little blue coupe. The second year we were racing, when we had the blue coupe, we had won a race, or we had won quite a few, but this one night, we'd been out on the track, had pictures taken. When it was time for them to go back in the pits, Al would sit on the Nerf bar on the side of the car. As he was going through the pits on the Nerf bar, Ron Cody in his division was in line to go out for his feature, and he hollered, "Wait 1 minute." So Dick Dunn stopped, and Ron hung out his window, and he patted my husband's belly, and Al says, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm rubbing the Buddha for good luck." And Ron went out and won that night. So since then, that name Budda stuck with him forever, and I was the one that says, "Gee, we should name the car Budda's Bullet," and that's where it all started.
One of the iconic cars of its era, particularly at Waterford, but in Connecticut in general, really. If you mentioned that car, everybody knew it.
Al had those cars immaculately prepared every week. I mean, you've seen pictures of the coupe. That car was absolutely gorgeous. I mean, for its time, that car was ahead of its time. It was just absolutely beautiful.
Al was friendly with a lot of guys who raced elsewhere. From Marvin Rifkin, who owned M&A Tires, to Richie Evans, Eddie Flemke, guys that raced elsewhere and maybe he could network with, so to speak, and he wasn't just a Waterford thinker. So maybe Al's cars were a little bit superior at that time, but they had the right guy driving.
And Dick was a real short guy, really long arms, and wicked strong.
Dick Dunn was strong. It was like if you wrapped your arms around him, it was like going around a tree.
Dunn probably had 4 of the most dominant years I've ever seen anybody have. He didn't win every week, but he was right. He was there every week.
Dick was a terror for those 4 straight years that he won the championships in the early to mid '70s.
He won a lot of races for Al. He was a tough competitor too.
Dick Dunn, he was like one of my idols back then. Driving Budda's Bullet, that was the dominant car of the area that I ran the modified. I learned a lot of lessons from Dick Dunn. Another real good driver.
He was a good runner, and he was a clean driver. One of the cleanest drivers over there.
To watch Dick pass cars without throwing a guy a wheel and with a lot, that's what I remember, just him winning without a lot of sparks. And guys like that are, they're rare at those kinds of racetracks.
Dick Dunn was Mr. Smooth.
He was one of the top 10 drivers at the Speedbowl.
I just liked Dick Dunn, he was a nice guy.
Dick really could excel at Waterford. He had the talent to, if the car was running perfect, he would bring it, he'd race for the win. If there was off a little bit, he could drive it, he would get it to where he could get a good finish without, taking any chances. He was a pretty cautious driver that way.
For as short a time as they were around, look what they did at Waterford. 4 straight titles or whatever. I mean, You know, and the thing you got to say about those guys, Al and Peg, and you know, they had a great driver in Dick Dunn. But one thing I always found cool is, you know, people look at a guy like Dunn and say, well, there's a guy that was kind of a one-track wonder. You know, even though he did win elsewhere, you know, he gets that label. But to me, you got to wipe all that out, because when the outsiders came, even if they won, they had to battle him to get the win. You know, it wasn't like Bugsy just came in and drove right by him, or Ronnie Bouchard came in.
Now, when you went to Waterford, who did you consider the toughest competition of the local guys?
Well, it had to be Dick Dunn and Budda in that 3-car. Dick Dunn was a great guy. You know, kept his roots basically at New London. Could he have gone further? Yeah, he could have. He was a much better driver than just what he did there. He could have went to a lot of different racetracks, and you know, Al Gaudreau, he was pretty sharp with them cars. You know, they were always on top of their game.
I found out the hard way that people don't like somebody that wins all the time. A lot of people in the beginning didn't like Al. He was very businesslike when he was at the track.
A lot of people used to boo Dick Dunn. And the reason that they weren't booing Dick Dunn, they were booing Al Gaudreau. Because a lot of people didn't like, I mean, Al wasn't a bad guy, but he could be very abrasive, sometimes very gruff.
And because we were running so good, and I mean, week after week, we would start 18th, and week after week, we were first, second, or third. A lot of them, you know, said, oh, he's got to be cheating.
They were like an experimental driver of M&H tires. I mean, Marvin Rifkin, he supplied Al with all the tires, and there was always kind of a conflict. Everybody complained that he got special tires.
And we were involved with Marvin, and so weren't they. And, you know, we tested tires, he tested tires. And, you know, people, of course, would always say that Dick Dunn had different tires than everybody else, and they always said that about me.
I didn't have any tires. And I was talking to Al. Al said, yeah, I'll give you these 3 tires that he ran the week before. And he says, but the only thing, you got to bring them back.
There's nothing in the rule book about what tires you could run.
He had a deal with Marvin, who owned M&H at the time, and they were like the fastest tires. I mean, you could run almost flat out around the track. And I was like, wow, no wonder this guy wins every week. Because they're definitely not the tires you buy off the truck, you know. So, and they were already used, but they were fast. It was amazing fast. So, actually,
did you give him back?
Yeah, I did. Yes, I gave him back. Yeah. Well, he reminded me too that night. You know, I will have these back.
There were times they were different. And there were times they had blisters in them that big. You know, so again, it was a testing project. But I mean, as far as having cheating tires, neither one of us had that.